There, so this is my week 3 response to Jesus Hernandez, and basically he was asking more about the environmental security and the US, because it is a leader in resource consumption, is it the biggest enemy to environmental security? And based off the readings, I would have to say no, and also based off my understanding of environmental security, that no, the US is not the biggest threat to environmental security. And I'm going to go off some of the points that we saw in the readings. There are inequalities in consumption and pollution, which is discussed in our readings by Collins on page 203, in the Think Point box 14.3. And he gives some statistics basically that the wealthiest 10% of people consume about 59% of resources, and the poorest 50% consume about 7.9% of resources. Also, the pollution rate is 30 to 1 of wealthy to poor. Also, in that Think Point box, it states that 60% of people in poor countries do not have basic sanitation, while 37% do not have electricity, and 30% do not have access to any clean water. So, while these numbers are staggering, they don't count for the factors seen in developing nations. Some fault of environmental security or lack of that comes from a lack of sanitation in developing countries and a lack of regulations. So, we're in the US pretty lucky to have enough. A government with enough power and authority and security to give us the regulation on the environment to be able to live clean and healthy lives. So, should the US be responsible for other nations' impact on themselves? No, but we should have some responsibility from the impacts that we have that spread out to those nations. Also, Collins discusses the basics of environmental security and the 6 points that he brings to it. One of those points is on page 195, basically declares that the causes and impacts of environmental problems do not have their own borders. That is, the effects created by one nation don't necessarily stay in that nation and spread out to affect others. So, the US, when it does create environmental security threats, can have an impact on other nations, but that's not the main impact that they do have. Also, consequences and actions can affect those who had nothing to do with the original action, since, has no borders. So there's no global responsibility, it's just national responsibility. And anything that we put out there, we have to be responsible for. But I don't believe that it makes one nation necessarily the biggest enemy to environmental security. Also, what I believe is that the biggest impact to environmental security are just humans in general. So we will be the biggest threat until with global solutions to create sustainable resources that will support and improve lives. So until that happens, I wouldn't say one nation necessarily is the biggest enemy. I'd say just humankind as a whole, with the lives that we've been living, are the biggest threat to environmental security.